the Marrakesh Declaration lifts up. And in that sense, it was a major contribution. One last thing. I found out it had me asking questions about other manifestations of these ideas in the Muslim community, and I found out in Bangladesh we have the key progenitor of this here is here with us here. Had done something similar in Bangladesh, in Indonesia now, and the largest civic Muslim organization, has come out with a similar declaration. And found out that there's actually a lot going on in Muslim countries across the world with similar kinds of efforts. And one of the things I tried to do was to bring them all together, and I think that has greatly strengthened the efforts involved here.
That's great, and that leads to a question, if I understand, so there was pre-work that was done in the power of personality and the power of Sheikh Ben Baya's persona as a scholar, was the amalgamator which drew all these people, and on his reputation, a group came together, and the document stood for itself in that sense. It was used internationally as a launching pad. Hamza Yusuf, how was the document, the Marrakesh Declaration, perceived in the Muslim world, both in East and West, because there's often divide in that? How is it perceived? How is it used?
Well, I think probably the most important aspect of it is it hasn't been refuted. And one of the things about the intellectual tradition of all of our faiths is when somebody puts something out there, you get responses for people that object to that. And this is why one of the things Shaykh Abdullah bin Bayya says is that he says, "A'malu bit-tadarruj," that I work by degrees. Like he doesn't do anything hastily. He really deliberates deeply, and then he brings scholars that he respects on board. For instance, one of the most important scholars, Taqiyuddin Usmani in Pakistan, was very important to him because he represents, first of all, because he's a real scholar, but second of all, because he's coming from a country where these issues are very sensitive issues. And so people like that, he brought them on board. And because they had over 200 scholars that he was dealing with and putting that before them, and I think what's interesting about it is for the vast majority of Muslims, they view dhimmatud as kind of the only response to a minority community within the Islamic context. The irony of that is that the Ottoman scholars actually abolished dhimmatud in the 1830s. So this is not a new thing, but what's different is what Shaykh Abdullah did. He comes from a tradition that's called usul al-fiqh. And the closest thing we have in the West to it is the traditional meaning of jurisprudence, the idea of the philosophy of the law. He would be akin to a constitutional scholar in our tradition. And so if you look at the Quran as a kind of constitution, and some people actually call it a dastur, right, the constitution of the Muslims, he has mastered the science of usul al-fiqh. And so he grounds his arguments within that context. Now, one of the beauties of, and I think the Jewish tradition is very familiar with this, is that rabbis or scholars or ulama can disagree, but they have to disagree within the confines of an acceptable methodology. And so what Shaykh Abdullah, there might be people that disagree with him, but they don't disagree with the rigor of his methodology. And I think that's what's really important. And probably one of the most important aspects of this is that the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Countries, recognized it. And this country here in the United Arab Emirates recognized it. Morocco recognized it. Jordan recognized it. So at that level, now, the challenge for us, Shaykh Abdullah always talks about what he calls ta'sil and tawsil. Ta'sil is to theoretically ground something in a solid, demonstrative approach. But the tawsil is how do we communicate that to the masses? How do we get that down? And this is the challenge is for ministries of education to adopt this. approach and understanding, and to really educate a new generation so that we can recognize that some of the practices historically in the past may have been the appropriate practices at the time, but they're no longer the appropriate practices today. And I think that's at the crux of his argument.
And so I believe, if I understand this, that means that the Marrakesh Declaration has underpinnings that are so solid, gave it the acceptance that it had, and Sheikh Ben Baya wanted those first ones it was intellectually understood and religiously understood. He wanted it actualized in a demonstrative way, which brings me my question to Bob Roberts. Bob, you come from a tradition where we've talked about this, that there has to be, you live your faith, and there can be little separation between faith and action. So I'm interested in terms of how the Marrakesh Declaration became, in many ways, the Good Neighbors Initiative, which became the Caravan. How have you seen this actualized? We're living in a time that is one of the most divisive times in our history, and I speak personally in America, as we know. We're at a particular time where the rise of anti-Semitism, the rise of Islamophobia, hate crimes against Jews, hate crimes against Muslims, hate crimes against race, it is its maximum. If I understanding the underpinnings of what you sought to do, you understood that when the Pew study, tell them a little bit about when the Pew study came out, what you discovered and what you decided to do.
So let me answer the question by
Sure.
this. First of all, evangelicals, I hate to tell you this, but we have the worst and most negative view of Muslims of any group in the world. That's not just Pew, that's our research. And so the question becomes, how can a follower of Jesus hate anyone? So here's what the Marrakesh did. It did two things that frankly, I would say evangelicals and Muslims actually agree upon. We believe that our scriptures are the basis for our authority for faith. So faith is not merely an experience that I have, but there's a foundation to it. Well, what the Shaykh did when he wrote the Marrakesh Declaration, and those who helped him write it, was to provide a biblical, well, for me it would be a biblical foundation, for you a Quranic foundation from your scriptures about what the truth was. And so what that did, it went from higher than just some person who's trying to use scripture for their own ends. And so it centered everything, here's the truth of Islam, which what that began to say to me, as I began to experience things as a Christian, was the best way that we can push back against extremism is go deeper in our own scriptures. Don't go beyond what they say, don't add to what they say, or don't take away. And so the documents of religious freedom are as much a part of Islam and the Quran as they are Christianity. And so what that enabled me to do was to say to other Christians, listen, they have their own theology and scriptural texts that teach and preach this. So as an evangelical, we understand that. Here's the second thing that it did. It's interesting how that we all know our truths, but it's how we live them out that gets us in trouble. So there's really nothing theologically or Quranically radical about what the Shaykh wrote. But to implement it and to live it, now that's another thing. And I would say the same is true of Christianity. So what did it do? It put the Shaykh out on the edge. I mean, to where he winds up on various people's, hit list and personal negativity and this sort of thing. That's not bad. That's good. Here's what I believe we have to do. We have to center ourselves on the truth of our scriptures, but we have to lead on the edges of our people. If we center ourselves in leadership in the center of our people, then we are always going to try to just keep them happy so that we don't lose people, so that everybody agrees with us, so our following is growing. On the other hand, real leadership comes from the edges, not from the center. That's exactly what this does. So it gives me credibility to go to evangelicals and say, look what they've done. And so the next response is, they believe this like we do. So we need to come together. Let's get to know one another. Let's have this deep conversation. And so that's where we came up with the retreat and the peace caravan, and we can talk about that later.
Hamza Yusuf, I'm interested to know, because in some senses, if I understand the power of Sheikh Ben Baya is, I don't know if he's actually on the edge. I think the reality is that he's firmly grounded in the most sound part of Islamic tradition and Islamic jurisprudence, and so.
Well, he's both. He's
Good.
in the center and he's on the edge. He's in the center in that he embodies a school of thought that's rooted in Medina from 1400 years ago. But historically, the Muslims, the scholars were very dynamic. And so whenever they had challenges, they would rise to those challenges. The tradition became very ossified. And one of the things that Shaykh Abdullah bin Bayya, he quotes Imam al-Qarafi, who said that جمود على النصوص أبدا ضلال وإضلال, which means that to have a stagnant approach, an ossified approach to your textual tradition is error and will lead others astray. And so what he looks at is it's very dynamic. One of his approaches, which comes out of this school, it's not his innovation, is that in ibadat, in devotional practices, you have to have a text that roots you in that practice. Whereas in what are called mu'amalat, in transactional practices, which are more the horizontal aspect of religion, not the vertical that aligns you with the divine, but the horizontal that you're dealing with humans, there's much more flexibility. And so much of the areas of contention deal with the transactional and not with the devotional. So what he's saying is we need to reopen the ability to work within the transactional to make
Excellent.
our rulings appropriate to the
So
time.
I want to turn to you now, Rabbi Saperstein, and ask the question, how do these documents resonate with your understanding of normative Judaism? Because we've heard from two parts of the Abrahamic faith in terms of, and in your experience, I know some others have talked about this today, but in brief.
In the Jewish community, you've heard in a number of the presentations what the values are that would underlie our view of how we regard other religions and the ability to work together. The ideas of the human being created in the image of the divine. That's every human being created in the image of the divine, filled with inherent dignity and value and worth. It applies to all people. The midrashic, that's a technical term, the midrash interpretations of the biblical stories ask, why were we, all of us, descended from one couple, Adam and Eve? To teach us, the rabbis say, that we are all brothers and sisters. We are all descended from the same family. None of our ancestors were more valuable than anyone else's ancestors. That common unity of humankind. Third, the idea of the treatment of what's called in Hebrew the ger toshav, the stranger. And Sheikh Ben Baya, in his wonderful talk this morning, talked about this as well. That 36 times in the Bible it says, we treat the stranger as ourselves. We are all equal citizens. What I talked about before, that idea
right.
of being equal citizens. We are all equal citizens when it comes to the social rights that we have in our society. Related to that, in the rabbinic era, from the time that Jesus walked the earth until Muhammad walked the earth, that formative period of the rabbinic period, there was the rule developed of mipnei darchei shalom, for the sake of the ways of peace. For the sake of the ways of peace, Jews and non-Jews are treated alike. They raise charity together. They administer charity together. They give to Jew and non-Jew alike, or in another thread, they visit their sick together. They bury their dead together. All of these things were done. You cannot have shalom, salam. You cannot have true salam, true peace. And peace is not the absence of strife in the word salam or shalom. It is wholeness and healing. You cannot have that if we treat certain categories of people differently in our society. Rabbi Rosen talked about the Noahide laws, that kind of first Geneva Convention of moral obligations of all humanity and all nations, from which the rabbis conclude that there's more than one path to heaven. You do not have to be a Jew to go find salvation or go to heaven in normative Jewish thought. If you obey the Noahide laws and believe in the one God, you can find your path to heaven. So it was very comfortable for us to think about how to treat religious minorities at our time. And we Jews know that we have been the quintessential victims of religious persecution in the history of the world. So often treated brutally by different non-Jewish regimes under which we live, exiled, banished, ethnically cleansed, so victims of pogroms and genocide. We know what it is like to be victims, but in those rare instances where we were treated freely and equally, in those instances, Alexandria in the first century...
when we were treated freely.
When we were treated freely. Alexandria and Egypt in the first century of the Common Era. Babylonia in that era under Muslim rule, in that era from the 7th to the 11th century. Abd al-Rahman, the Caliph of Cordoba in the 10th century, where Jews had rights akin to the rights that we enjoy in democratic societies today in the context of that world. The Ottoman Empire in the 16th century, Amsterdam in the 17th century, and all these before the Enlightenment, before the Age of Reason, when it was embodied, at least in Western civilization, that all should have equal rights. We flourished in those societies, and we contributed to those societies more broadly. It's a model of our having worked together. One final note on that. There is a lot that we can do. We have the model of the Forum, and we have the model of the Alliance for Virtue. There are things that we can do together. We heard many of them here. Combat poverty in our local communities and on the global scene. Protect God's creation. Deal with the dangers posed by the changing climate.
I'm going to cut you off just for the sake. You get a chance to answer this and another thing. That's my prerogative here for real quick, because what I want to talk about now, and you can...
30 seconds away, but...
Okay, but I'm going to ask you to transition this, because this is the... Shaykh bin Baya asked us to do what is part of each of our faiths, that there is a correlation between belief. There is no belief that doesn't have an action that's correlated with it. You've spent your entire rabbinic career teaching the Reform movement that there has to be action, social justice. We can't just have the words of the prophets. So what I'd like to start, and I'm going to work back to you to think in terms of this. Bob, Pastor Roberts, in part of this, how can we see this happening in short, where in both the Marrakesh Declaration was placed into perfect harmony, and we had such fruits of this today when we, Hamza Yusuf helped us gather. We had a rabbi of tables, a table at lunch of imams and rabbis and ministers talking over discussing with one of the presenters something that we found objectionable and something that we wanted to clarify. There was this open dialogue, this opportunity. How do you see this falling out as the opportunities that we have to actualize the alliance of virtue?
I think the first thing it does, it says that we have to engage with one another. And so we teach something to these pastors when we get them together. We say go with the hand, the heart, and then the head. Most of us start first with the head. I'm going to argue with you. I'm going to debate you. If I can win, then I'm going to like you. It's going to capture my heart. Now if it's in my heart, now I'm ready to take my hand and work with you. We reverse the order. because there's some theological challenges for people that haven't known one another or been in relationship with one another. It's just too much. But if you start with the common good of society and you start with the hand, you sweat together. Once you sweat together, then you begin to love. You like somebody, you care about them. Now you're ready to have hard conversations. Little illustration. Imam Majid Muhammad is one of the best friends I have on the face of the earth. I love him deeply. And so
He
recently...
told me the same thing.
Huh?
No, I'm just teasing. Go ahead.
Okay, so Majid Muhammad was telling me, he said, I was reading the scriptures, Bob, and I know you want to be like Jesus, and Jesus didn't eat pork. I said, what? He said, Jesus didn't eat pork. And I began to think about it, and I thought, he's right. Jesus was an observant Jew, and he didn't eat pork. So I said, I'll tell you what, Majid, you're right. I'm going to quit eating pork. But did you know what Jesus' first miracle was? He said, no, Bob, what was it? He said, Jesus turned the water into wine. Yeah. It's time for us to have a glass of wine together. Now,
No, hold on. If you can turn the water into wine, I'll drink it.
So I want to move on to, I want to ask Dr. Sonosi the following.
Yes.
I want to ask you, Dr. Sonosi, because how do we get, what does inclusive citizenship mean in terms of being able to actualize the alliance of virtue?
Yeah.
How is that actualized in
So let me tell you, the Marrakesh Declaration, it was a beginning of journey. But the byproducts of the Marrakesh Declaration, it is a number of initiatives that Shaykh is leading and the Forum for Promoting Peace. But before I actually answer that question, I wanted to mention one of the major impact of the Marrakesh Declaration, and that is what happened in the Tunisia Constitution. Today, the international community and the entire globe is celebrating the Tunisia constitutions, the constitution that protect the right of religious minorities and religious freedom. Why? In the preparation for the Marrakesh Declaration, we had a meeting in Tunis. We engaged, the Shaykh engaged the transitional parliament in Tunisia, which positively reflected in the last production of the constitution we are celebrating today. This is a major impact. Second impact I have to make is that this interlink between the Muslim world and the Muslim communities, those who are living in minorities in the West or in other places. Today, we see Muslim minorities in some of the countries, their number is more than entire states that we see in the Muslim world. In the United States, for instance, we're 10 million Muslims. It's more than some of the, 7 to 10, let's say, more than some of the states. In India, how many we have? 200 million. So the interlink between these communities, we see the Muslim phobia, as Shaykh Hamza always wanted to say, the anti-Muslim sentiment. When we see the lack of religious freedom, the persecution of religious minorities in the Muslim majority communities, those Muslim communities in the West, Muslim minorities, they're also suffering because we see that interlinks. So inclusive citizenship is one of the initiatives that the Shaykh started. And just last month, we had the meeting here under the leadership of Shaykh bin Bayya for the Christian from the West and Muslim scholars in partnership with Walton Park, the UK government, and the Adyan Foundation to talk about inclusive citizenship in the Muslim world or other places that respect pluralism, respect diversity, give the rights of citizens to enjoy their rights, whether it is freedom of religion or freedom of exercise or other freedoms. So these are initiatives that came to being because of the Marrakesh Declaration. And in addition to that, we'll talk about what we have done, the Alliance of Virtue, and what are the recommendations are being implemented.
All right, I want to go back to Bob, to Pastor Roberts, because I interrupted you in the middle of that. Can you go a little bit further in terms of, because, you know, in that understanding of faith and action, you've actualized that with Imam Majid and others. What do you see the impact that you're seeing in the Christian world of, like, the caravan and these efforts?
So it's pretty dramatic. Most of the pastors we focus on evangelical pastors because that's where the problem is. If you put people together that all agree with one another, it's a waste of time.
David,
You've got to get together with people that actually disagree with one another for it to work. So when we get them together and they get to know one another, our goal, frankly, is not even the cleric. The goal is the masses. But the pastor, the imam, the rabbi, they have authority over their members. And so if you can challenge them, then what happens? It begins to challenge the rest of the people that are the congregants. As a result of this, we've now got 168 congregations involved, over 500,000 people represented in those congregations just in the last year. That's 13 cities. Hopefully this next year and for the next 4 years in a row, we're going to keep having cities. But what we're learning is if you get people together relationally for a period of time, anything is possible. I would also say this, if we're really going to make a difference, it's going to come with that community engagement. So we have different things we have them to do, to go to one another's home, to get to know one another, to be together. But finally, when we really let the rubber meet the road, so to speak, it's whether we're building homes together, or we're feeding the poor together, or we're working in nursing homes together. Those things are critical because it begins to bond the relationship.
And I want to ask Rabbi Saperstein to go back to what he was saying, because this is the idea, is that, if I understand Hamza Yusuf, that Sheikh Ben Baya has given us, is that all of us have a commitment to the alliance of virtues. We all have the same core, if you will, virtues, which come from our prophetic tradition, which come from the Quran and the Prophet, praise be he, because we have this understanding. So, David, what are the opportunities that you believe that we have for these shared opportunities in the alliance of virtue?
Yeah,
I interrupted you at feeding the homeless, and please.
Yeah, well, I was saying there's some things that we can do best working together through an entity like the Alliance for Virtue. And we're all in it together. And I mean, think about the great moral challenges we face in the world today. Poverty in our local communities, poverty at a global level, the need to ensure every child, including every girl, receives a strong education that is so vital and important to achieving the goals we're talking about. The need to protect God's creation from terrible threats that confront us at this time. The ability to ethically apply new technologies here at a time those technologies can destroy the world as we know it. We live in an era where technology allows us to do almost anything we want, but in an age where you can do everything, what you should do, the moral question, is a great question facing humanity. And on that, we have common things that religion can bring to bear to challenge and guide the conscience of the world in employing this. And in working together, we are modeling exactly the kind of world that we want to create. Mm-hmm. At the same time, there are struggles we face, and Hamza Yusuf talked about winning the hearts and minds of people in the street in terms of the messages that Sheikh Ben Baya has put forward. There are things that we sometimes have to battle within our own faith traditions here, and often then interfaith cooperation can actually be used to undercut the impact and effect of what we're trying to do, and can better battle within our own, particularly in fighting against extremists within our own faith traditions and winning the hearts and minds of our own people. So, you know, if the battle is against extremist Buddhism in Myanmar and how it has affected the million Rohingya who have been ethnically cleansed from their country and so victimized, It's going to require us to find ways to support the Buddhist community that are the mainstream communities that can win the hearts and minds of their people. And the same is true in terms of fighting Muslim extremism, Jewish extremism, Christian extremism. So there are times we can do things, and that is what the forum is doing in terms of the Muslim community. And it's a challenge to us in other faith groups to undertake a similar kind of struggle within our own faith communities on this world, on these issues. So, you know, that it is both what we can do together. I'd love to see every country. You talked about some that have adopted the Marrakesh Declaration or embraced it, formally recognized it. What would it look like for every country to embrace or acknowledge the Marrakesh Declaration? What would a campaign to achieve that look like in your country? I would hope that at some point soon we would actually have that question.
And we've talked about at the forum and challenging what it would look like for every congregation, every mosque, every community to accept to understand what it would be to be an Alliance of Virtue community, an Alliance of Virtue congregation. How do you see this, Hamza Yusuf? Because in your last session, which you spoke about, when you talked about the impoverishment of humanity, not so much from the physical aspect, but from the moral and intellectual aspect. Right. What do you see as the opportunities of that you see in the Alliance of Virtue?
Well, I think one of them is to recognize that that there are moral virtues, which a lot of people tend to know about in some way, but we forget there's also intellectual virtues and there's theological virtues. And so recognizing that virtue is a much more comprehensive term than a lot of people realize. One of the most important things, I mean, the Bible teaches that man cannot live on bread alone, that the souls right now are impoverished. And what's interesting is that a lot of the food that we eat now is actually not nutritious for our bodies. In America, we have an obesity problem, not because people are satiated, but because their bodies are actually hungry for real nutrients, because they're eating all this processed food, so they never feel satiated. The same is true there's a spiritual hunger, but that spiritual hunger is going to be fed by a type of processed spirituality that doesn't really nurture the soul. It leaves people in a state of deviance. I mean, one of the most dangerous phenomenon to me that's happening in religion in the world today is people breaking out of the traditional structures of religion that protect the spirituality of the human being. And so in essence, we create a world of heresies. You know, the Greek heresia is to choose for oneself. And so I think that we have an opportunity first to recognize that the moral virtues, especially the agreed upon, we have one of our great sages, Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, said that the four cardinal virtues of courage and chastity, temperance, and wisdom and justice, he says these are agreed upon by all civilizations. So those are very important, but then the idea that the human being, what makes us unique, what makes us distinctive, is that God has given us the logos. He's given us the ability to reason. And if that's not cultivated, and what we're seeing now is a breakdown of decorum in our societies. And Arnold Toynbee said one of the most dangerous aspects of a society in real decay is vulgarization. He said that societies will become vulgar. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, يَظْهَرَ الْفَحْشُ وَالتَّفَحُّشُ. He said, that when the signs are very dangerous, he said, you'll see obscenity. And then he said, but you'll also see takalluf al-fahush, which is that people will be obscene gratuitously. Usually people are obscene when they're angry or something, they might use a swear word. But he said they'll do it gratuitously. And so these are all, I think, for us, just one final example of this. There's a great pastor from Philadelphia that I recently found out about, Charles Albert Tindley. And one of the things that he did, he led protests against cultural phenomena that degraded people. And if we took something like that seriously, I think our religions can remind people, can restore a type of human dignity. Because one of the hallmarks of a true civilization is beauty. All of our civilizations, the clothes that traditional people wore were embroidered because they had a sense of beauty. The food they ate was embellished because they had a sense of beauty. The calligraphy that they wrote with was beautiful because they... So restoring the virtue of beauty, just aesthetics, and there's a whole moral philosophical tradition that argues that ethics and aesthetics are actually the same essential reality. And we find that in the Arabic words for good deeds, which are hasanat, which means beautiful things, and foul deeds, which are sayyiat, which means ugly things.
So I want to ask, and this is, we all look for best practices. And as we go for the Alliance of Virtue, I think one of the things that we're finding when we do the Caravan of Peace, we have exchanges because we're all working in communities and we bring out best practices. And so the evangelical community has been involved in global efforts. And I know, Bob, you have, and I have a beautiful, I send every year to Kevin, who in this process adopted a child, brought a child into their home. And you've been working in Vietnam for how many years, Bob?
25.
25 years. So there is an opportunity where faith and action are coupled. How do you see some of those as to being a paradigm, perhaps, for opportunities for us spreading this message globally?
I think there are. So like David Saperstein and myself and Majid Muhammad, we went to the Rohingya camp together in Bangladesh. In my tradition as an evangelical, we think of serving people with our tribe. What if we serve people outside our tribe? Isn't it a strange thing for an evangelical pastor, an imam, and a Jewish rabbi to show up in a camp together? And I would be what Miroslav Volf would call an exclusivist. I believe Jesus is who he said he is. I am a real-life Christian. Now, that may scare you because, of what I believe, but the reality is, if I'm a good Christian, you should want me to be the best Christian that I can. Because if I love like Jesus, what that means is, I'm going to be willing to go to the cross for you. Even if you don't agree with what I believe, that's a good Christian. If you're a good Muslim, you're going to believe in the Marrakesh Declaration because it's out of the Scriptures. When we get outside of our tribalism, it gives us an opportunity to shake our faith up a little bit. Here's what happens. As long as we're with our tribe, serving God, it becomes cultural. But when you get outside your tribe, now it's relational. And so what that means is, how am I going to interpret my faith where I can live it in the public square? And I'm convinced this is the question for all of the faiths in the 21st century. How do we live in the public square? Tribalism is over. It's not, it's there, but it's a dead-end road. So I would simply say this. I think when we look at engaging, one of the things that has changed me the most is not to just engage with my own tribe, but others. We've worked in Vietnam for 25 years. 15 years ago, I met the mayor of Hanoi, and he said we had no special ed curriculum for our children. So my wife and a team of educators literally wrote the entire curriculum for the country. It took them 10 years to do it. We helped get some people, some PhDs. They're not even Christians, they're communists. But that changed me in the sense that, what does it mean to love people that are not like you? And the result of that has had profound impacts. And, believe it or not, we actually take Jewish professors with us that have helped us on that. I'm asking myself all kind of questions. What would it look like if we work together and we hold on to our faith passionately? We don't compromise, but we love the world the way that God loves it.
And this is what I think Sheikh Ben Baya has asked us in the Alliance of Virtue, is to challenge us about what does the road to an alliance of virtue look like. I'd like to read a short statement, and then I would like to, we have a little time we left for questions, and we're going to finish precisely at 2 minutes before 7. But I would like to read the following and see if it resonates. we come to understand how the beliefs we hold can shape a better future, not only in Muslim societies, but in all the human family. In a world torn by war and hatred, we seek peace and harmony. These are not lofty aspirations of the poetic mind, but virtues of the human soul. They are and can be the building blocks of our collective destiny, or if ignored, they will represent the greatest loss of opportunity of humankind. Such a failure of virtues will leave an indelible mark on an already fragile and fractured world. Our individual faiths as children of Abraham teach us such virtues, and our moral responsibility demands we live these teachings, choosing love over hate, faith over fear, civility in contentious times, freedom in lieu of tyranny. We need not harbor hatred, no matter how deeply it is rooted in the habits of history. We need to herald a new day where love and harmony become the habits of the heart, teaching our children these virtues, not by our declaration alone, but by our actions. This and only this will accelerate the alliance of virtue we seek, the one God's love can inspire in us. God patiently waits for us to turn promise into practice, declarations of the heart into actions of our hands, transform the fragility of our fractured world into a world worthy of God's gift. These virtues will give us an alliance and guide us by our allegiance to alliance of virtue. I'd like to open it up for a moment for questions, and I think if there are people that have questions of our panelists, they've said a lot. I want to thank them for their candor and their willingness to apocopate what they prepared. But are there questions?
Huh?
Yep. What did we forget? I think we're good.
It's good, yeah.
What'd you say? I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
They're much better than
Yeah, we'll take two questions. Take them in the row. Yeah, we'll take them.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أخوكم الدكتور عبد الله الشريكة، مدير مركز تعزيز الوسطية في وزارة الأوقاف الكويتية، وأمين سر اللجنة العليا لمكافحة الإرهاب في مجلس الوزراء الكويتي، ونائب رئيس اللجنة الشرعية في بيت الزكاة. أسجل إعجابي الكبير بهذا الملتقى وبما انبثق عنه من منتدى تعزيز السلم. أعني أن الملتقى انبثق من هذا المنتدى، وكذلك إعجابي الكبير بهذا الحضور الطيب وهذه المشاركات الشفافة الواضحة التي نحن بحاجة ماسة لتعزيزها ولرفع سقفها. أنتهز الفرصة بوجود معالي الشيخ عبد الله بن بية وفقه الله والحاضرين لأطالب بمقترح بسيط، وهو تعديل اسم المنتدى من منتدى تعزيز السلم في المجتمعات المسلمة إلى أن يكون منتدى تعزيز السلم فقط، حتى يكون في المجتمعات المسلمة والمجتمعات غير المسلمة، لأني أرى أن رسالة هذا المنتدى قد أصبحت رسالة عالمية تسير على هدي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الذي قال الله فيه: وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين. ولم يقل وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للمسلمين فقط، بل للعالمين أجمع. أعجبني كثيرا ما أشار إليه الرباي الكريم حول قضية النصوص الدينية. نحن فعلا أمام مشكلة في كل الأديان، تنحصر هذه المشكلة في قضية أن هناك نصوص واضحة جدا فيها السماحة، فيها حسن التعامل، فيها حفظ الحقوق، وهناك نصوص أخرى في كل الأديان قد يفهم منها الكراهية ونشر الشر إلى آخره. وفي هذا الله سبحانه وتعالى يقول في القرآن عن هذا التأصيل الهام، يقول: هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات، يعني واضحات بينات، وأخر متشابهات، يعني تحتمل أكثر من معنى. فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله، يبحثون عن الفتنة من خلال البحث عن هذه النصوص المحتملة. ولذلك النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم في حديث هام جدا يبين دور العلماء في كل عصر، يقول صلى الله عليه وسلم: يحمل هذا الدين من كل خلف عدوله. ماذا يفعلون؟ قال: ينفون عنه تحريف الغالين، الذين عندهم غلو، عندهم تشدد، عندهم تعصب، انحراف فكري، يقحمون غلوهم في الدين، يجعلون هذا الغلو من هذا الدين، ينفون عنه تحريف الغالين وانتحال المبطلين وتأويل الجاهلين. ولهذا الأديان بحاجة للتجديد وبحاجة للتصحيح بين فترة وفترة، ليس لنصوصها مثلا، وإنما لفهم الناس لهذه النصوص الدينية. أعجبني كثيرا كلام جناب القس حول قضية التعايش وأهمية أن يأكل أتباع الأديان مع بعضهم. أنا أؤكد لجنابه ولكل الحضور الكريم أن هذا كان معمولا في سنة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، فقد كان قد أجاب دعوة امرأة يهودية وأكل معهم عليه الصلاة والسلام، وكان يجاورهم، وكان يحذر أشد التحذير من أذيتهم. بل وكان عليه الصلاة والسلام كما في صحيح البخاري في حادثة أتمنى أن تشتهر، مرت أمامه جنازة لرجل يهودي، فقام لها عليه الصلاة والسلام، فقيل له من بعض جلسائه: يا رسول الله إنه يهودي، يعني من دين آخر. فقال عليه الصلاة والسلام: أوليست نفسا؟ أليس هذا إنسان؟ أليس هذا من البشر؟ ولهذا في نصوص القرآن عندنا يقول الله تعالى: ولقد كرمنا بني آدم، لم يقل ولقد كرمنا المسلمين، قال ولقد كرمنا بني آدم ككل، لهم الحقوق وعليهم من الواجبات المؤصلة في شريعة الإسلام. أيضا أثني على كلام حضرة الراباي في أن الواقع الإسلامي يشهد بحفظ هذه الحقوق. الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم توفي ودرعه مرهون عند رجل يهودي اشترى منه صاعا من طعام، لم يأخذ طعام هذا اليهودي رغما عنه، مع أنه كان قادرا عليه الصلاة والسلام، ولكنه لم يفعل لأنه يحفظ الحقوق. إذا تأملنا في المسيحيين في مصر، المسيحيين في الشام، اليهود كذلك، أنتم تعلمون أن أقدم كنائس العالم، سأختم بهذه،
I want to get to one more question, but I believe that it's great to be fortified and to give us the opportunity to hear. But we're going to share one more question, and we will leave it to the Peace Forum whether they will change the name. I think it's a beautiful suggestion, and it's really the direction. We have time for one more question. I think that's there. And to make sure, in our tradition, a question ends on an up note with a real question and not just a statement. So if you wish to make a statement, don't make a statement, but just a question. Peace be upon him. Whomever.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. دعوني أولا أسجل إعجابي بهذه الحلقة بالذات من النشاط اليومي، إنها كانت حلقة ناجحة بسبب حسن إدارتها وبحسن نوعية المشاركين فيها. هذه الملاحظة الأولى. الملاحظة الثانية، أعيد الجواب الذي تقدم به على السؤال الذي تقدم به مدير الجلسة للأخ يوسف عما إذا كانت وثيقة مراكش قد استقبلت بالقبول في العالم الإسلامي، وأكد له أنها استقبلت بالإجماع في العالم الإسلامي بالقبول، وذلك عائد إلى سببين اثنين. السبب الأول هو أن معد الوثيقة يتسم بالأهلية بأعلى درجة من درجات الأهلية في المجتمع الإسلامي، والبعد الثاني أنه يتميز بالصدق، ونحن في تراثنا لدينا مقولة تقول: إذا خرج الكلام من القلب وصل إلى القلب. إذن هذه الوثيقة أمرها محسوم على مستوى العالم الإسلامي، وأنا مسرور بما سمعته من الخام ديفيد عندما قال إنها أصبحت مرجعية في دوائر عديدة. إذن نحن الآن ما نريد أن نعكسه هو التساؤل لإخواننا من أركان البيت الإبراهيمي الآخرين: كيف استقبلت وثيقة مراكش؟ وهل يمكن لهذه الوثيقة فعلا أن ترتقي إلى أن تجسد طموح الجميع، وحينها نحذف كما اقترح الأستاذ كلمة في المجتمع الإسلامي، لأننا أصبحت لدينا وثيقة مشتركة. ودعونا هنا نعترف ونقر بدون حساسية أنه في كل زوايا وأركان بيت العائلة الإبراهيمية نقاط معتمة مظلمة يجب أن نسلط عليها الأضواء بشجاعة، لأن القضية قضيتنا جميعا. وحتى في كل زوايا وأركان بيت العائلة الإنسانية نقاط معتمة. إذن دور هذا المنتدى أن يسلط الأضواء على هذه النقاط المعتمة في أركان بيت العائلة الإبراهيمية وفي كل أركان بيت العائلة الإنسانية. وفي هذا السياق من المهم أن يكون هناك ذراع إعلامي كآلية لهذا المنتدى، لأن ما هو بمقدور منتدى كهذا المنتدى هو أن يبني رأيا عاما، لأن هناك تأثير تتمتع به السلطات فقط والحكومات، ولكن الرأي العام يؤثر فيه أساسا الإعلام، فلتكن هناك وسيلة إعلامية ناطقة باسم هذه القيم وباسم هذه المشتركات الإنسانية. دعونا نعترف جميعا أنه في كل ركن كما قلت من أركان البيت الإبراهيمي وبيت العائلة الإنسانية ما ينزل عن مستوى النصوص المقدسة التي نتعلق بها جميعا. ليس منا من لديه القدرة أو من واقعه يعكس مستوى النصوص المقدسة التي يعتقدها. دعونا نسلط الأضواء على هذه القضايا بطريقة مشتركة وبدون حساسية من أجل مصلحة الإنسانية ومن أجل مصلحتنا جميعا. ودعونا نضع مع ذلك صيغة لاطمئنان الجميع بأن هذا لن يمس من الخصوصيات مصانة، ولكن المشتركات يجب التشبث بها كما التشبث بالخصوصيات، لأن هذه المشتركات موجودة في النصوص المقدسة. في كل كتاب مقدس عندنا فيه الإيمان بالله، فيه الإيمان بحق الإنسان وكرامته، فيه الإيمان بأهمية العدل. إذن هذه المشتركات يجب أن تنمى وأن تعطى حجمها وأن تكون جزءا من اهتمامات جميع الساكنة.
I'm going to interrupt because I don't want your words to make my words invalid, and my words where we're going to stop at a particular time. And I want to thank you because I could not agree more with the concept that you demand of us. And I believe we owe this all to Sheikh Ben Baya, because this group of individuals that are here and these talented men and what they have done in the world has been inspired by Sheikh Ben Baya, and he challenges all of us to create and the road of what the alliance of virtue will mean, not only in the Muslim world, but in all the world, because wisdom, grace, and the opportunity to live virtues is our moral responsibility to our faith, to our God, and to our children, most importantly, because they will inherit the world. I want to thank our panelists for all that they've done and what they continue to do, and I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Bruce, just 1 second, please. I just wanted to, I want to recognize, we cannot discuss Marrakesh. I want to recognize the role that Ambassador Rashad Hussein played also helping with Marrakesh. So please join me and just thank Rashad Hussein for his work here. And
We-
lastly, Bruce, I wanted to say is that the Alliance of Virtue, we are actually transforming the dialogue to action. The recommendations from Washington of the Alliance of Virtue, we're seeing them implemented today. The 2.5 billion meals that were raised in Kuwait just 2 weeks ago, these are the result of the Washington and Alliance of Virtue. So thank you so much. I want to just
Well,
emphasize
thank
that.
you very much. And I challenge the Alliance because I have a lowly congregation of just 3,000 families.
I know.
And we celebrated last Friday our 1 million meals that we have done alone. So
Wow.
our entire community should be able to do much better.
So we add that to the 2.5 million.
And excellent job at moderating. Thank you.